Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Friday, December 6th, 2024. Time for another show. I was just sort of sitting here listening to the introduction and wondering, what happens if, nothing happens, right? Well, what happens if I turn on the microphone right in the middle of the announcement and just say, hey, I'm not waiting. I'm just starting the show. Hey, I'm so excited. I don't know. I don't know what story I need to bring you that requires that sort of urgency, but I don't know. I thought about it. It seemed like fun at the time, and then I thought, I don't know. People have certain expectations about the way this show is going to work. Okay. So, it's Friday, and that means for today, the decks are wide open for us to clear out, pocket, talk about all sorts of things. I don't know whether we're going to do it with two long-form stories, one long-form story that will drive poor Scott up the wall as he tries to summarize it with like one link and tries to find, he usually supplements it by finding other links, which is, I should be going back and reading the summaries on the air and expanding on shows, but then I'd never get onto new material. We'd be caught in an infinite loop. I don't know. Not sure how today is going to go. There's an awful lot happening, and golly, no real plan for addressing it all because it's also crazy and also intertwined. Many people are talking about this, and actually this is something will require more discussion. More discussion certainly than Hunter Biden pardons, let's say. Still reaction ongoing, and still people talking about the ongoing reactions to the shooting of the the United Healthcare CEO, whose name escapes me. I'm not up on my CEOs, and this is now an infamous thing. It was infamous when it became murder. It's not great, but everybody's talking about it in very abstract terms. Although they're very deeply personal terms. Everybody who has to deal with insurance, and I guess, millionaires, billionaires don't have to do that. I assume some of them have company-paid insurance, but they can also just go outside of network and not worry about things. And I guess that's the big difference between the others who are out there making healthcare policy for the rest of us and those of us who just have to live with the one we get. But everybody who has to deal with an insurance company has at least a sliver of sympathy for the frustration, even though, it's really been interesting. The share of the population that has said, they're stuck clinging to the respectability politics of, I don't condone murder, because you don't want to condone murder, because if you do, then someone could murder you, and then what would you say? Well, you would be dead. Anyway, but were you not dead? Well, had you been shot in the ear, let's say, you could then condone. I don't condone my murder. I condone. Well, anyway, you get the idea. There's, of course, sort of a Robin Hood element to it, except that we're not getting any of our money back from this guy. That's not what's happening. But maybe now is the time to bring this up. I didn't bring it up yesterday because we had lots to talk about yesterday, but I mentioned that there are a number of weird theories circulating about what this murder might have been about. And by the way, I at least owe you the name of the CEO from United Healthcare. It's Brian Thompson. He was a person. We should say so. But there are a number of different theories circulating, and the evidence that was discussed yesterday, that is the markings on the shell casings that sort of kind of paralleled the name of that book about how bad the healthcare industry is and how bad I think United Healthcare is in particular, certainly lends weight to the theory that it was a disgruntled customer/patient who did this thing. And nothing new that I know of dissuades us from this possibility. But one of the theories that circulated kind of early on afterwards, and I'll have to find it. It might be parked behind a Blue Sky tweet. I might have grabbed the whole thing, but I thought I also posted the story itself. Apparently, United Healthcare has been targeted by ransomware thieves for some time now, and that they have been paying, I guess, exorbitant sums to these ransomware thieves to get them off their backs. You know the scheme, right? They hijack the website or online operations of a major corporation that needs, to be able to have access to its website in order to do business, and for however it's done. And, you demand a payment, and then you'll release them once you get the payment. I don't know. And I guess you just keep exploiting them, right? It's just like any other extortion deal. The worry is that if you give up and give money, that they'll just screw you over one more time because they see you as a mark and come back to you. So early on what's today? December 6th. That was the first thing I said today on the show. December 4th, when we were, I think, just learning about the United Healthcare CEO's Brian Thompson's killing, unless this is the day after. I forget already which day of the week it was that we found this out, but this is like December 4th would have been Wednesday. Yeah, so I think that was, that morning we found out about this. Anyway, there's a Blue Sky posting here from Cooper Lund, who I believe we've read something from before. I forget who he is, but he seems to be a relatively famous type of guy with lots of followers. Anyway, his post here, a friend, not necessarily the most solid sourcing in the world, but a friend just informed me, though, that United Healthcare has been making large crypto payments. And I mean, that's how those payments will be made, right? The stuff is built for crime, and of course it's transferable easily over the internet, etc. But large crypto payments to ransomware gangs all year. Gotta wonder if that's related to its CEO getting assassinated. And I haven't seen much more exploration of that. And I mean, you're not going to find shell casings anywhere around saying you didn't pay us our ransomware, so we killed you. I mean, you could. That would be an interesting and cold-blooded message to leave behind. But now you have to sort of decipher, well, is it what it means on its face? Are these markings on the shell casings a straightforward declaration of consumer anger, or are they misdirection? We need somebody. People will readily believe, happily believe, and it certainly seems to be the case. People are very happy to believe that this guy got assassinated by a disgruntled customer patient. I don't even know what they call I guess not patients. They're not doctors. That's the big problem, right? Anyway, that would certainly make great cover if you were assassinating him because any other reason. You didn't like him in high school. You are divorcing him and he has been terrible to you. You are a Russian mobster and you have no idea what's going on. You were just hired to do this killing, and maybe you thought it would be good cover to leave behind, dumb, traceable clues that made it look like an entirely different storyline was going on. Or, I guess, just as a thought, you are a ransomware gangster, and you've been extorting either this guy or his company for however many millions of dollars all year, and you wanted to up the ante, and he finally broke and said, screw you, no payments, and spoke to the FBI, and you kill him. Damn, that would really be something. And it would make us all feel dumb for, saying, well, I don't condone murder, but that's been this overwhelming sentiment online, among people who are kind of, their tongues are looser online. Let's say TikTok apparently is full of, Robin Hood-esque commentary. Even though, again, and that's my own term for it, and I don't think I've been seeing other people use it. It's an inaccurate comparison. Like I said, you're not getting your money back from United Healthcare because this guy's been shot. But you get the idea of some sort of righteous hero doing this murder as opposed to, well, we don't do that sort of thing at a minimum, right? But TikTok is full of this. TikTok is apparently full of people posting videos of their own, like, folk music compositions, if not celebrating the murderer as a hero, then at least saying, you had it coming. This is what everybody feels. And it's apparently a very popular position to take, and I certainly feel part of it, and I certainly feel the same sentiment that others feel when they post offhand comments like, I'm not giving you my worldview on murder or revolution, for that matter, in a single offhand one-line tweet, but, you got to be a part of you that says, as many people comment offhandedly, things like, I guess, your bulletproof vest wasn't approved for coverage, or was the shooter out of network, or, things like that. Or, your shooting is important to us. Please stay on the line. Something like that. I can't not feel that. It's just real interesting. Despite, I guess I'll throw in also that there's lots of warnings out there from, wise heads on Blue Sky and elsewhere, reminding us, before you start cheering for populist, revolution, do consider that the historical lesson of violent revolution is that even if it's being launched in the name of a populist grassroots movement, it frequently results in the widespread murder of most of the people who should have benefited from this revolution. And, of course, its leaders in the end as well. So don't root for violent revolution if you want to live to see the end of it. On the other hand, lots of people are already, seeing their end written on the wall because of what the insurance companies are doing, and they may have less to lose. Anyway, back to the other theory, though, that was floated. It was interesting because it came with an article about it. Someone was saying here, a guy I saw on the internet said that a friend told him. This is really what it comes down to. That United Healthcare has been making large crypto payments to ransomware gangs all year. You got to wonder if that's related to its CEO getting assassinated. Here's the story from CBS News. What's the date line on this? April of this year, April 18th, 2024. United Health says Change Healthcare cyber attack. I don't know what's going on here. We'll learn about it. Cost it $872 million, which I'm sure at the time generated lots of, too bad. But they lost that $872 million. Guess where they're coming to get it? Yeah. Out of your pocket. So anyway, Christopher with a K, Christopher J. Brooks, KH, in fact, is the author of this piece. Let's find out what's going on here, or what was going on. A cyber attack earlier this year against the United Health Group subsidiary. There we go. That must be the Change. What was it called? Change Healthcare. Just read. We'll find out. Has proved costly for one of the nation's largest employers. Oh, that's a play. Largest employer. The insurance giant on Tuesday noted $872 million in unfavorable cyber attack effects in its first quarter operations earnings report. That's a new kind of entry, I think. Those unfavorable effects refer to the February 21st cyber attack on Change Healthcare, which shut down operations at hospitals and pharmacies for more than a week. The $872 million included the Change Healthcare business disruption impacts and exclude the cyber attack direct response costs, which likely excludes any amount United Health may have paid to hackers in ransom. It's just sort of stated that it's out there like, okay, if I'm new to the story, why is that a suspicion? United Healthcare confirmed on the day of the breach that cyber criminals, there we are, behind the attack was a Russia-based ransomware gang known as, ALPHV, but could be ALF 5. I don't know whether that's that or God only knows what they think they're going at. But the much more easy to pronounce Black Cat was an alternative name that was given for this Russia-based ransomware gang. And I did just sort of throw out there Russian mobster shot him, kind of randomly, because, I don't know, this kind of shooting is the sort of thing that gosh, that could be a Russian gangster doing it. Anyway, the group itself claimed responsibility for the attack, alleging it stole more than 6 terabytes of data, including, quote, sensitive, unquote, medical records. United Health did not reveal how much, if at all, it paid the hackers to have their systems restored. However, multiple media sources at the time, including Wired magazine, reported that a ransom payment for the amount of $22 million was made to Black Cat in the form of Bitcoin. We should definitely switch our gold reserves in Fort Knox over to the currency of choice when paying Russian ransomware gangs. I think that's going to be awesome. United Healthcare declined a request for comment by CBS Money Watch on Tuesday. Ransomware attacks, which involve disabling a target's computer systems and cause considerable havoc, are nothing new and have become increasingly more common within the healthcare industry. A study published in JAMA, the Journal of American Medical Association, JAMA Health Forum, in December 2022, found that the annual number of ransomware attacks against hospitals and other providers doubled from 2016 to 2021. A study, now, there, you could have, here's an opportunity for Russian ransomware gangs to do some good PR, right? They could be literally doing the Robin Hood thing. You steal $22 million and distribute it. That might make you a hero. Although the fact that it has, it's computer crime and it's Bitcoin and of course everybody would get a pittance. And you stole all the data. You know who the customers are. You could just send them checks or Bitcoins, but you're not. You're keeping the money, and so, boo, everybody hates you. Anyway, a study published said that it happens all the time, and examining the effects of an attack on a health system that found that waiting times, median length of stay, and incidence of patients leaving against medical advice all increased. An October 2023 preprint from the researchers at the University of Minnesota found a nearly 21% increase in mortality, yikes, for patients in a ransomware-stricken hospital. I mean, it's not going to improve things, certainly, but it's very dangerous. The Change Healthcare incident was straight out an attack on the U.S. health system and designed to create maximum damage. CEO Andrew Whitty, different CEO here, but only Change Healthcare. They're a subsidiary, right? Andrew Whitty told analysts this during an earnings call on Tuesday. The cyber attack will likely cost United Health between $1.35 billion and $1.6 billion this year, the company projected in its earnings report. Despite the $872 million hit, United Health Group trounced first quarter expectations. Imagine that. They're still able to crush expectations and therefore increase shareholder value. How did they do it? United Health reported $99.8 billion in revenue during the first quarter of 2024 and a per-share profit of $6.91, surpassing the $99.2 billion in revenue and $6.61 per share forecast by analysts on FactSet. I mean, it sounds like they pretty much got that forecast right. I wonder if the guys on FactSet are like, hey, that was a terrific prediction. That was all in this, in this setting. That was dead on. You have it down as we were wrong. But, it's good PR for the company to be able to say they beat expectations. I mean, you beat expectations by 30 cents. Come on. Anyway, we got through that very well in terms of remediation and building back to full function, Whitty said. I don't know if everyone would agree, and certainly not the people who contributed to the 21% increase in mortality during the attack, but I don't know, maybe that's just hospitals. About 80% of Change Healthcare's pharmacy claims and payment computer systems have been fully restored since the cyber attack. Roger Connor, CEO of Optum Insight, said during the analysts' call. All the CEOs are there. I wonder if the United Healthcare top dog CEO was on that call. Anyway, this doesn't reveal much about who's doing the stealing and why, but it is a very interesting possibility, to hold out there as a complicating factor that what if part of their remediation post-cyber hijacking, whatever the heck, you would call it attack, was to, they called in security, and now we feel like we have a handle on it, and so we're not paying anymore. And what a message it would be to, tag that CEO, and say anybody in your organization can be gotten to. You got to make these payments. That's not as much a thing to root for anymore. But, no evidence that that's what's going on. But there's certainly evidence that there's another storyline that makes itself more apparent. The question is, why is it there? Is it just genuine artifacts of a, random grassroots level revenge killing? Or is it, a disguise of something more sinister? We'll likely never know. But it would be, of course, irresponsible of us not to speculate. All right, plenty of other things to look into, but the first break not too far off. Let's start reading about other things that are happening here. Maybe I'll save this one for after the break, too, because there's a whole theme to be done here. But we can at least give you the news from the New York Times. Who's reporting here? Annie Carney. Okay. Has the news that the House of Representatives, of course, has blocked the release of the Gates ethics report as Republicans close ranks. I mean, it was expected, but let's talk about it, and we'll talk about the procedure that was used. And though it's the expected outcome, why not keep doing it anyway? Very little reason. In largely party line votes, the subheader says, the House turned back 2 measures that would have forced the Ethics Committee to make public the results of its investigation into allegations of sexual misconduct and drug use. Of course, by Matt Gaetz. That's not in there, but, it's unspoken. It's the subheader. We don't have to blame him for that. I didn't read you the story the other day of one of the members who was offering this stuff. I had a, ABC News report from a couple days ago, where Representative Sean Casten, an Illinois Democrat, Casten introduces new privileged resolution, that's what we're talking about, to force Ethics Committee to release Gates' report. If that got your hopes up, it's just because you don't remember what can happen to even a privileged resolution. The best it can get you is a couple of, a vote or two in which the Republicans can, in fact, close ranks and prevent the report from being released, but they have to go on record as protecting, drug addict, pedophile Matt Gaetz in order to do it. So that was one of the 2 motions offered, I assume. But let's jump forward to what actually happened. Since I didn't take the time to inform you about what Sean Casten had on tap, we'll just go to what happened once he brought it out. The House on Thursday night blocked the release of a damaging Ethics Committee report about former Representative Matt Gaetz, Republican of Florida, as Republicans voted to bury it, an expected move that makes it less likely the materials will ever be made public. Expected, yes. Dirty nonetheless. I did see some people complaining about, well, if you say it's expected, this contributes to the media narrative that, it's expected that Republicans will do nasty things and cover up their crimes and misdoing. Don't just let that roll off your back. And that's a lesson well worth absorbing. But in the meantime, Republicans closed ranks to turn back 2 nearly identical Democratic written resolutions that would have forced the release of the report on the ethics panel's years-long investigation into, allegations of sexual misconduct and illicit drug use by the former congressman. They did so by moving to refer both measures back to the committee. That was the mechanism they used. They could have tabled the resolutions. They could have voted straight out on the resolutions, but they wanted to do whatever they could to distance themselves from having a direct vote on yes or no, release this thing. And they're much happier having people have to explain, well, it wasn't a vote on that. It was a vote on whether or not to ask the committee to, So refer it back to committee. I mean, the committee has held its hearings and its investigation and has concluded and has written a report. So the idea that, we'll refer, this is what happens. You're bringing a resolution that says we will release the report. That we resolved, we will now release the report. And so what do? You send the resolution after all, it takes the form of a resolution. Let's let a committee discuss whether or not we should do this. And you don't just bring a resolution to the floor. You have to have hearings on it. Who will have those hearings? Well, obviously, it's the jurisdiction of the Ethics Committee. Let's send the paper that says we should release this other paper over to the committee that has the other paper for them to decide whether or not they will report favorably on the resolution for them, directing them to release paper number 1. I think that they won't like it very much. But also it will be deadlocked at best in the is it evenly divided, the ethics panel? I can't remember. For some reason I suddenly began to doubt that it was, but it's certainly it's meant to be evenly divided to cover up for crap like this. But of course you can't do anything with a tie vote. So anyway, there's that. So they sent both measures back to committee, which has so far, of course, refused to make its report public. The vote on the first resolution was 206 to 198, almost entirely along party lines, with nearly all Republicans voting to block the report's release and Democrats voting to make it public. And I don't know whether there were any defections or they're just saying there were some absences. The vote on the second measure, which included language about preserving the records but also demanded their release, was 204 to 198, also almost along party lines. And it's not clear whether the 2-vote differential was due to any sort of position that members were taking or whether the position they were taking was they were in the bathroom at the time and they just didn't make the vote. My position was on the toilet. So, that really you shouldn't read too much into that one. Just one Republican, it says, Representative Tom McClintock of California, sided with the Democrats. So there was at least that one defection. All right, we can read a little bit more about this and move on to bigger stories after this short break.
Hi, I'm Scott Anderson, the guy that writes the daily summary for this show, Kagro in the Morning. Thank you to everyone that supports this show. Many of you send donations through PayPal, Patreon, Square Cash, Radio Public, and so on. Some of you write your own essays and send them in, or read articles with your own commentary. We appreciate it. Now, some of you are listening to this and thinking, I'd like to help, but isn't there something I could do that wouldn't require money or effort? Why, yes, there is. You can just like us. On Daily Coast, they call it the recommend button. YouTube has a thumbs up. There are hearts and likes and love buttons. Tap our love button. Tap our love button every day. Share our shows and summaries on Facebook and Twitter, YouTube and iTunes, Stitcher and Amazon. Most of these places allow you to write a review, so a sentence or two would be great. Recommend us to social media, or tell your friends to listen to the show. You aren't just helping us, you're helping them find their new favorite thing to listen to. You could change the world. So thank you in advance from me and everybody else in the world.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's continue reading some procedural news about what happened with the privileged resolutions. 2 privileged resolutions offered on the House floor yesterday, demanding the release of the Ethics Committee's Gates report. Democrats, it says, have continued to press for the release of the ethics report, even though Mr. Gates has resigned from Congress and removed himself as President-elect Donald Trump's choice for Attorney General, at least in part because the ethics report was complicating his confirmation process. Speaker Mike Johnson has said that because Mr. Gates is no longer a sitting member of Congress, again, part of his position, he's not sitting, the release of the report would set a bad precedent in the House and has urged the Republican-led committee not to release its findings. Democrats have argued that burying the report is concealing credible allegations of sexual misconduct. No workplace would allow that information to be swept under the rug simply because someone resigned from the office or from office. Representative Sean Casten, the Illinois Democrat who has spearheaded the move to release the report, told ABC News, although I actually suspect that many workplaces would allow that information to be swept under the rug simply because someone resigned from office. If you're, an officer of the company, if you are, although very frequently even just regular employees who are accused credibly of this kind of misconduct, if they just quit, the HR department, for instance, if they go and try and find a new job, and they put out their resume, and they'll often call the places where people worked and ask questions about them, and the HR policy is absolutely sweep it under the rug. We don't discuss why any of our employees separated, even if they fired them for cause. But anyway, that doesn't really help what's going on here to point that out. But, it is true. Mr. Gates, of course, has denied all of the allegations. They helpfully report here in the New York Times. The member being referenced in the resolution has actually resigned from the House of Representatives. How am I not being able to pronounce? House of Representatives. Therefore, the question is moot. Representative Steve Scalise of Louisiana, the House Majority Leader, said on the floor Thursday night, moving to refer the resolution back to committee. Since 2021, the House Ethics Committee has been investigating allegations about Mr. Gates. That year, it opened an inquiry into sexual misconduct allegations as well as claims that Mr. Gates misused state identification records, converted campaign funds to personal use, accepted impermissible gifts under House rules, and shared inappropriate images or videos on the House floor, among other transgressions. I must say, by the way, it's highly technical, the grounds that Scalise, grasps for not releasing it. I understand the inclination as a matter of policy not to, release ethics reports on people who aren't members of Congress. But it's not like they were never members of Congress, and Congress is just doing ethics investigations of random citizens that they don't like. And also, the idea that you can be like, well, I'll first of all, I will probably be leveraging my congressional immunity from arrest during this whole time while I'm gallivanting around the country and around the state committing sex crimes. But then, to get caught dead to rights, wait your time all the way through the investigation, dragging your feet the whole way, and then finally, when they finally say, okay, now we've done so much investigation and so much, due process type nonsense that we've had to jump through all these hoops, that we can finally definitively say, all right, even in an evenly divided panel between Republicans and Democrats, with Republicans having your back every step of the way, we can still say you're actually guilty of some pretty horrible things, for you to be able to say, bye, isn't really a great outcome. They really do need to think about a way to resolve that issue. The secretive bipartisan committee met earlier on Thursday for close to 3 hours to discuss the report, but all of its members were mum as they left the meeting. After the session, the committee issued a terse statement saying that it, quote, met today to discuss the matter of Representative Matt Gaetz. The committee is continuing to discuss the matter. There will be no further statements other than in accordance with committee and House rules. So, not much discussion of the procedure there, just sort of the fallout from it. But you see what must have happened there, right? You you write up your resolution, you drop it in the hopper, you get some floor time on the day you introduce it, and say that you might not even need the floor time there, but you're basically at some point on the floor the next day or so, you say, I have a privileged resolution at the desk, and you might have a fight over whether or not it's privileged. That's something that the chair can rule on. And you remember the rules of it. If you're one of the leaders, if you're the minority leader in the case of the Democrats, or one of the top, floor leaders of either party, you get somewhat different treatment when you claim a privileged motion is being brought. And when a party leader brings a privileged motion, you get immediate consideration. When a backbencher or non-leader figure brings a privileged resolution, the chair reserves to itself, I think, a 2-day period in which they get to consider and consult with the parliamentarian over whether or not they will designate it as privileged. It's often quite immediately apparent that it is or isn't, but they take the 2 days anyway. But it's not much time. And then eventually, at a minimum, after the 2 days, you get to then claim some floor time. You get an hour, and they'll divide it evenly between you and an opponent perhaps, of the resolution, and you can have a debate then about the privilege first, if that's what they want to fight about, or if the other side or the majority has decided how they want to dispense with the thing, then you have some discussion about that. Either, I have a privilege resolution at the desk, and right, like I said, the majority has the option of saying, I move to table the resolution, which just means ignore it, essentially. Just put it over here on this table and we won't do anything about it. Or you can move to refer the resolution to committee, which is what they did yesterday. Or you can have a straight up vote. I'm just here to say I think this resolution is wrong and we shouldn't release the report, and let's roll the dice. But yeah, members are, on the Republican side there, are begging them to take some action to prevent them from having to vote up or down on releasing the report. So instead they can just say, I'm not against releasing the report. I just think the committee that wrote the report should decide whether or not to release the thing. But they've already decided not to release it. That's why we have this resolution. Yeah, but I thought that they should consider that resolution and think again about releasing the report. If they come back again with a no, there's nothing we can do. But of course, there's like 6 minutes left in this Congress, so referring it back to committee at this point is definite death. But, they could change their mind any time, but they just won't. All right, so there you go. That's your procedural story for the day. Now back into pocket, and we can put together a long read type theme for you if you wish. Why not? How about today's theme being Elon Musk, now that he has bought the government? Another installation in what he's done here. And by the way, very interesting play that he made here, which was, of course, freezing the media in place up through about mid-year by telling them, I'm not giving to either one. I'm not supporting either candidate in this race. And that led to this series of stories. Gosh, it's hard to pin down his politics. It's not that simple. People say he's a conservative. Critics say he's a conservative, but maybe he isn't. Well, as it turns out, he gave $250 million to the campaign effort for Trump. But you find this out now after it's too late. Like, would it be of interest going into the election to find out that there's one guy funding the whole thing? Yeah, probably. How do you avoid that? Well, you just make promises to people. Go ahead, spend this money. I will cover it, but I won't cover it until later so that I don't have to report to the FEC until it's too late that I've given you $250 million. This is a Washington Post piece that runs under the headline describing some small portion of that money being given, but gets around to the overall figures. Elon Musk gave $20 million to a mysterious group defending Trump's abortion stance. And I guess if you are one of the many millions of people who heard during the campaign, Donald Trump opposes, he doesn't want a nationwide federal abortion ban. He wouldn't sign such legislation, which was a really, really sly way of saying, we're going to ban abortion if they went with that formulation. Because, of course, he doesn't have to sign the abortion ban for it to become law, but I don't think that's what they were talking about. They were trying to say that he would oppose such a ban. And even that was kind of useless because it was like, well, they support the ban in all the states and they support using existing federal law to make it almost impossible to get an abortion, even if you live in a state where it's not yet illegal. But there was all of that. But, if you came away with the impression either as an undecided voter or as a very decided voter, a pro-Harris voter, you almost assuredly heard the message that no, he opposes the federal abortion ban. And if you did, it was probably because of this money being spent. Elon Musk gave $20 million to a mysterious group defending Trump's abortion stance. And by the way, this mysterious group, the new PACs pop up all the time. They choose names that are either anodyne and you can't figure out what they're about, or sometimes they're outright conservative action PAC, but what are you going to do about it? Or sometimes they're misleading. We read yesterday about the false flag advertising that was also Elon Musk funded, right? Where you advertise to Muslim Americans that Harris has said, I love Israel so much, I hate the Palestinians. And then you advertise to the Jewish community that she has said, I love Palestinians so much, I hate Israel. And everybody says, I could never vote for such a person. But I can't believe they let me in on this secret. I got the secret message that they meant to send to the other group, mysteriously. Well, here's a different kind. What was the name of the mysterious group which Elon Musk gave $20 million to advertise that don't worry about abortion because Trump is your friend. He will prevent a national abortion ban. The mysterious group was called RBG PAC. Yeah, like Ruth Bader Ginsburg PAC. It didn't say it was Ruth Bader Ginsburg. It just said RBG. But, you know, so much time and effort has been invested in making RBG the popular culture nickname for her that it was hard to miss. A mysterious group called RBG PAC that ran online ads defending Trump's stance on abortion days before the election was funded entirely by Elon Musk, new filings show. Too bad those new filings come, too late to do anything about them. Elon Musk, reporters here, Trisha Thadani, and Clara Entz Morse. Okay, I don't think I know those names, but glad to meet you. Elon Musk bankrolled a mysterious campaign group that sought to convince voters in the final days of the presidential election that Donald Trump would refuse to sign a national ban on abortion, according to Federal Election Commission filings released late Thursday. And again, if the president doesn't sign legislation, that doesn't actually do anything. If you veto it, that's one thing. You don't sign it if the House is still in, if Congress is still in session and you don't sign it for 10 days, it's still law. So, to the extent that anybody cares about, you can't just lie. Donald Trump just can't lie to people. Sure he can. He does all the time. I don't know why he would have to go in for something like this, but anyway, not signing it means nothing. And at a minimum, it's, those guys are just ignorant of what the Constitution says about this thing. But more likely, they know exactly what it says, and they just enjoy confusing people. But at any rate, the filings for RBG PAC, apparently named in reference to the late Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, show the Elon Musk Revocable Trust funneled $20.5 million into the group just days before the November 5th election. It was the sole disclosed donor. So I guess there was some more money. They just don't know where that money came from. And it probably wasn't very much compared to what he gave. But yeah, okay. Ginsburg, of course, was a longstanding supporter of the right to abortion, but her granddaughter, Clara Spera, previously criticized the group, saying in a statement that RBG PAC has no connection to the Ginsburg family and is an affront to my late grandmother's legacy. I am sure that it was considered as such. When was this statement given? I'm just sort of curious. It doesn't say because it redirects me. It's incorrect. An incorrect link, I guess. They're linking back to this very same article. So that's just a linking mistake. But okay. She did previously criticize them. I just don't know when. I was interested in when because I just don't remember it happening. But okay. On YouTube and Facebook, accounts with the same name as the Super PAC. And again, like here you see, all right, that's evidence that tends to prove that this was done by RBG PAC, but that's all it is. Online, anybody can say they're RBG PAC and open a YouTube or Facebook account. So it's accurate to put it this way. Accounts with the same name as the Super PAC posted short ads that feature women saying that Trump has promised he will not sign into law a national abortion ban if elected. Democrats staunchly disputed that claim during the presidential campaign, saying Trump could not be trusted, to do anything, but certainly not to protect abortion rights. They cited his conflicting comments on the issue and the appointment of Supreme Court justices whose votes helped overturn Roe v. Wade in the first place in 2022. Exit polls on Election Day conducted by Edison Research showed divisions between supporters of Vice President Harris and Trump on abortion. Some 65% of all voters said abortion should be legal in most or all cases. Of the 31% who said it should be illegal in most or all cases, the vast majority were Trump supporters. Musk, one of Trump's largest donors and closest confidants, has not been publicly linked to RBG PAC until FEC filings Thursday night revealed its funding. Isn't that weird? The billionaire campaigned heavily for Trump after endorsing him in July, donating more than it says here $250,000. The actual figure, $250 million. Just one of those typos there, but no one can believe that anybody would put $250 million. But I mean, unless they're talking about $250,000 that went specifically into one particular fund. But apparently in total, the figure is nearly or more than $250 million in all, between donations to super PACs and PACs like this one and direct to the campaign, etc. More than $250 billion to support Trump and other Republican candidates through late November, other filings released Thursday showed. During Trump's campaign, Musk, in online posts, interviews, and alongside the former president at rallies, largely focused on the candidates' policies on crime, immigration, and the economy. The Tesla CEO, watch out, CEOs are in danger these days, spoke far less about Trump's stance on abortion, but he said at a town hall shortly before the election that if a baby can survive outside the womb, it cannot be aborted, according to a video posted on social media. And by the way, as Tesla CEO, they just had that horrible fiery crash of a Cybertruck that killed like 3 college freshmen home on Thanksgiving break or something like that. Crazy story. We didn't mention it. It wasn't, a big part of our coverage when it happened, but I'm sure you saw something about it. And I don't know. Lots of people are very dissatisfied with what's been going on at Tesla lately. No one has risen to the level of wanting to shoot anybody, but I guess now that we're having people's kids dying in fiery crashes, not even a bad crash, like they jumped the curb and got wedged between a tree and a wall, apparently, and then battery caught on fire, and everybody was trapped inside. And, crazy situation. CEOs are in danger these days. That's all I'm saying. Musk, who has fathered at least 11 children with multiple women, by the way, has frequently expressed concern about declining birth rates. They never should have given up on the weirdo thing, but okay. And has expressed concern about declining birth rates in the United States and other rich nations. He has said it is a moral imperative to have children for the world to avoid population collapse. Now, by the way, I think largely the reporting about population problems in the world has usually been population explosion. Of course, what he means is by population collapse is white population compared to populations of people of color around the world, which are exploding. And he doesn't like that because, I don't know what. I guess he feels threatened by the possibility that, well, they'll kill me because of my color. Aren't they the real racists or something like that? But he's South African. Maybe that's ingrained. But there's no population collapse going on unless you're talking about white supremacist views of white population collapse. And that probably should be noted in the article at some point. Like, haven't we all seen that the population is going in the exact opposite direction? Why are we reporting about population collapses? Anyway, yeah, and also, they might as well point out, well, he's frequently expressed concern about declining birth rates, and he's fathered 11 children himself, so he's dedicated to the cause that isn't happening, the population collapse. Maybe a note here also, he is apparently known for offering women, vials of his own sperm so that they could impregnate themselves with his babies. He's weird. Right. Anyway, on Thursday, the article concludes here, Musk amplified a post expressing concern about declining birth rates certain people's declining birth rates, I guess, to his more than 200 million followers on his social network, X, adding, people have been brainwashed into civilizational suicide. Not at all a weird message, right? All right. There are a couple of other articles on the subject here, and I guess I don't have at the ready because I was, I actually didn't find it that necessary of a story for you guys that Elon Musk had donated, or that they had run up the totals and reached this $250 million mark. But I'll grab one now just so that we can reassure ourselves that I'm not just saying, well, they say million, but they definitely mean billion, because that's a pretty big difference, right? Are you sure that this is just a typo? Well, NBC News, who did we read from? Oh, it was Washington Post. NBC News has this headline, easily enough found. Elon Musk spent $250 million in electing Trump, including financing the mysterious RBG PAC. So their version of this story has it as $1 billion. Just so you know. I think we got it right there. Okay. And if I recall correctly, I did see circulating on Blue Sky like a screenshot of the FEC report from online. And what's amazing is, it's like a spreadsheet, and the space they've given for the aggregate amounts donated by Elon Musk, or for any donor, right? They have a pretty big wide column for the amount donated. But this one is jam-packed, and I imagine they probably had to expand it. There's more zeros here than they're used to seeing. People have of late donated $1 million. Some people even donating $10 million, but I don't think they've ever seen it in the hundreds of millions this way. All right. So, okay, well, at least we've confirmed that it is correct. It is $250 million. Now, there has another Elon Musk story here from a different type of source. It's Religion News Service. And we, every once in a while, do turn to them. Very often, something that Greg brings us. I think he spots their stories every once in a while. This one from Jack Jenkins, and it's just from the other day. How Elon Musk became prophet, not F-I-T, but P-H-E-T, Religion News Service, prophet-in-chief of tech's Trump-leaning conservatism. And remember, Greg was just the other day discussing that weird phenomenon of right-leaning, right-turning Silicon Valley. So this may be of some interest, and overlapping it with religion seems to make is an interesting angle. Since becoming a Trump supporter, surprise, the tech billionaire has arrived at a new stage in his evolution, weirdo evolution, from insisting science and religion cannot coexist. But of course that would have left him on the outs in Trump's circle, so he had to come up with some rationale. I love religion from a weirdo, non-religious, scientific Silicon Valley perspective, I guess. In the waning days of October, several hundred people gathered at the Life Center, a mega church in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, for a town hall organized by the Trump campaign. Attendees chatted excitedly as they filed into the church's cavernous sanctuary. But when the event began, the speaker who strutted on stage wasn't former President Donald Trump or one of his evangelical Christian promoters. Instead, it was Elon Musk, the billionaire owner of SpaceX rocket company, Tesla electric cars, and the social media platform once known as Twitter. Musk, the richest man in the world. By the way, if it's a good thing that the doors to the place were larger than an eye of a needle, don't you think? The richest man in the world has long approached religion with suspicion, you might say, and some in the audience were skeptical. One asked what was keeping him from believing in God. I believe in the teachings of Christ, replied Musk, whose jacket was adorned with a NASA logo and a mission patch from one of his rocket projects. I believe in the Christian principles. Love thy neighbor, all of them, I guess, or at least 11 of them. Turn the other cheek, which is very important to have forgiveness, because if you don't have forgiveness, then you have an endless cycle of retribution, which, of course, is exactly what they were campaigning on. Well, not so much a cycle of retribution, but lots of retribution that would hopefully end the cycle by them winning and killing all the people they wanted retribution against. Anyway, Musk then expounded, giving an unusual take on Turn the Other Cheek. arguing that Christ's edict should only apply if you are already strong and if you're not weak, which seems like kind of the opposite thing, but whatever. If you're facing a sort of predatory threat and that threat is stronger than you and that threat doesn't believe in Christian values, then you will just get, executed, he said, adding he does not believe the idea is prevalent in the Middle East, the home of the religion. Anyway, the exchange signaled a new stage in Musk's shift from insisting science and religion cannot coexist to describing himself as a cultural Christian. I don't go to church. I just like to use your ideology. But also not your ideology. But I like to say it's your ideology because your ideology is very popular. I'm going to tell you what it says now. Strange as the metamorphosis may seem, scholars and experts on the non-religious say it is part of a broader trend among secular thought leaders and big tech entrepreneurs. Once seen as a bastion of liberalism, Silicon Valley leaders have increasingly echoed ideas from conservative Christianity on topics from family size to transgender rights. At times, their ideas have seemed to overtake traditional faith as a guiding force for conservatives. Very interesting that they're able to overtake even Christianity's view of itself. And that's rather amazing. And I guess compare that alongside what we were discussing yesterday, and I was talking about on Blue Sky earlier this morning, the weird transformation of Twitter from when you were using it to try to change the world. They told you, Twitter's not real life. Touch grass, get out, now that they have bought it and control it, Twitter is not only real life, it's your government now. And guess what? It's also your religion. Isn't that amazing? Of course, don't bother learning anything about the religion and then adopting it. Why not just say you're an expert and people believe you and you just say, you know what, your religion means the opposite of the thing you thought it meant. Since the election, Musk, who had once criticized Trump's character, has become a regular at the president-elect's Mar-a-Lago resort, which is a nice way of putting it, and will co-lead a non-governmental advisory group, that's the Doge thing, Doge, tasked with cutting government spending. Some critics argue his relationship with Trump is one of convenience, given that Musk's businesses, both of many, stand to benefit from a sympathetic administration. But scholars on the non-religious, that's an interesting designation, again, argue that his rapprochement with Christianity goes deeper. Let's find out how deep it goes after this break, I guess. Why not? All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We're in the middle of reading from Religion News Service about the weird, the weird guy, Elon Musk, and how he has recognized, you don't have to be a genius to recognize this, but to recognize that, okay, a significant part of Trump's power center is conservative Christian, religious folks, but specifically conservative Christian religion. And I have zero in common with them. But very much like Trump, what if I just told them I did, even if it didn't make any goddamn sense? Well, as it turns out, that will work just fine because most of them have, most of them are in the business of fooling themselves anyway, one way or another. And if you don't want to just label their religious practices that way, because it's unfair, because lots of religious beliefs and practices are a little bit goofy if you are examining them objectively. But at the very least, you could say, well, if you are, let's say, a big believer in the prosperity gospel, because it has the word gospel in it, you're safe believing in it because it's Christian, because gospel. What if it's the McDonald's gospel or the give your money or your life gospel? Well, let's see. Let's test it out and find out. The prosperity gospel has been widely adopted by particularly mega church congregants and the like. So they're a ripe target for it. And, Musk, you don't have to be a genius, but it doesn't hurt if you can figure out, if I just tell people, I'm a big Christian adherent, he doesn't need them to give them his money, although they are all giving him their money regardless, not through the church, but through the businesses and various other channels, I guess you could say, even if that's just advantageous tax code exploitation, and they hold that up as legal. Anyway, you don't have to speculate on the various ways that they're giving them the money. It's just they're primed for this stuff, and it doesn't take a genius to figure out. If I just say whatever the hell I'm doing is Christian, there's a pretty significant number of them that are going to believe that. I'm sure there are many, many doubters who are in that church, but they don't make it into the article. But articles aren't real life. Get out and touch grass. Same phenomenon, by the way. Anyway, since the election, Musk, who once criticized Trump's character, has now been hanging out with him and says he's awesome and he's super Christian. Some critics argue his relationship with Trump is one of convenience, given that Musk's business stand to benefit from a sympathetic administration. But remember the scholars on the non-religious? Am I one? I don't know. No, I'm not. But one of the scholars on the non-religious argue that his rapprochement with, I love saying that as French, rapprochement. I don't know if that's even, I say it's French. It's a French word, and it's the cognate, but am I pronouncing it correctly? I don't know. But many others say that this goes deeper. Who says it? Greg Epstein. Not that Epstein. Greg Epstein. A human. The end. A humanist chaplain. There we are at Harvard University, which we totally hate if we're Christian now or something like that, or Elon Musk. Harvard University and the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, both. This is, by the way, he just rows back and forth across the river to do his humanist chaplain work as between Harvard and Massachusetts and MIT. You might easily mistake him for Charon, I suppose. But, if we're giving up on the Greek mythology, he's a humanist chaplain, not the ferryman to the underworld. Seeks, what were we reading about him? Yes. Okay. Greg Epstein, not Charon, sees Musk's pivot as the least surprising thing ever. He is smart. No wonder he's involved with the folks at Massachusetts Institute of Technology and the other one across the river. He's, okay. I once heard that the Harvard elitists like to call MIT the trade school across the river. Anyway, he's the prophet-in-chief of this new wave of highly religious technology that is a dominant force in the current Republican coalition, Epstein said. And he might want to change his name if he wants to work in that area. But anyway, I would say that traditional Christian preachers are still a pillar, of course, of Trump's administration and what it stands for. But they've at least been joined, if not superseded, by a different style of preacher. And superseding would be really something, don't you think? Epstein argues in a new book, Tech Agnostic, how technology became the world's most powerful religion and why it desperately needs a reformation. It's a hell of a title and a hell of a premise. Anyway, he argues that the tech itself has become the object of worship in Silicon Valley, particularly artificial intelligence, venerated in some minds for its potential to either destroy the human race or rid it of all its ills. And that does sound like an unlikely dichotomy. I think probably the truth falls somewhere in the middle. And by somewhere in the middle, I mean on the destruction of all of humanity, but -1. So that's somewhere in the middle. Oh my gosh. Anyway, it could be the human race's total destruction or its salvation. Not really sure which. Let's toss the coin. I mean, there is a lot of veneration of artificial intelligence in a very dumb way, which is usually a problem when you're talking about veneration in general. And it's a problem in religion, and it's also a problem in tech. Not super smart people see that talking about this generally accepted topic makes you sound knowledgeable, whether it's tech or religion, and some people will just buy into it regardless, whether it's tech or religion. But, I think of the AI rush. It's much more serious than this, but I think of the way it's used in business as something like the .com rush, where it became clear like we see with, the various meme coins that get launched. And we were started by a teenager in their bedroom, and you have a market capitalization of $1 billion in 6 days. What sense does this make? None. But like the .com rush, you start a business, it's a .com, like a legitimate thing, where in the sense that it is all online. It is a .com, whether it's a good business idea or not, right? All of a sudden it's worth $1 billion. And by the way, overnight it could be worth zero. Pets.com, billions of dollars, $0. I don't know. But when I say the .com gold rush, I'm referring to, there was then a secondary movement by non.com businesses. Secondary movement to say, let's get online. And that was like a legitimate thing too, right? You're a brick and mortar store and you say, we got to start an online site. People are looking for us for everything online these days. And although we're entirely brick and mortar, we'll start a website and we'll sell our products that we sell in our stores online. We'll just ship it to people. We got to be .com. Home Depot needs a website, whatever. Purina Cat Chow needs a you want to order cat food direct from the manufacturer and have us ship it to you? All right, fine. It's stupid. You can go to any store and get it, but whatever. We want to be part of this. There was that version of it, but there was also the version of it where they were like, we have no intention of having a serious online presence other than if you want to buy direct to consumer and have us ship it to you, fine. But they're not really a .com per se. In some cases, they didn't even do that. We'll have a website. We won't offer anything for sale because we don't offer anything for sale. We are a consulting company, but if we call ourselves a .com or in some cases, let's say interactive, that was hot briefly. As well, we don't want to lie and just say we're something .com. We want to be more creative than that. So we'll throw in interactive instead. And maybe our value will go up because people are looking for .coms to invest in. This was, at the big boom time. And so the fake .com boom. And it reminds me very much of this artificial intelligence thing, right? In the sense that we don't do anything with artificial intelligence. And there's almost no way that artificial intelligence as it now exists could improve our business model. But it is very hot. And at investors meetings and earnings discussions, if we say we're getting into artificial intelligence, stupid reactionary people will say, ooh, that sounds hot. Sounds like I'll make more money. I will invest more or I'll hang on with this company. What do I mean? We sell shoes, but we're going to be using artificial intelligence to do it. How so? Well, I told you we have a website. And now if you go onto our website and you search for a product, a shoe, on our site, you have to ask our AI bot, where can I find this shoe? And our AI bot tells you what the weather is where you live and where the shoe is. So boom, artificial intelligence. No, it's not. All right. But I think that's what's going on. That's a distraction, however, from this article. Oh boy, do I love distractions. What were we saying? Yes, Greg Epstein, the guy who rose back and forth between Harvard and MIT to be a humanist. What? Humanist chaplain. Okay. Argues in his new book, Tech Agnostic, how technology became the world's most powerful religion and why it desperately needs a reformation, says that the tech itself has become an object of worship, right? Venerated in some minds either for its potential to destroy the human race or rid it of all its ills, either deliver us or kill us. Musk has become a kind of papal figure among tech moguls, Epstein said. Though he has readily invested in AI, Musk has voiced concerns about its potentially cataclysmic dangers. Musk is also given to apocalyptic visions of ferrying humans. Wait a minute, ferrying humans, isn't that what Greg Epstein does? No, that was just a joke that I made based on nothing. He doesn't ferry anyone. But God has somehow inserted ferrying humans into this. Okay. God has a great sense of humor. Musk is given to apocalyptic visions of ferrying humans to Mars, avoiding our extinction by being biplanetary. Woo. He could ferry them to Pluto, which actually has a moon, even though it is almost a moon itself, called Charon, right? Doesn't it have, or am I thinking of a different planetary moon? Okay. Anyway, something, ferrying humans to Mars, which is totally different than ferrying them to the underworld, which also is, not a thing and we can't reach. But okay. Anyway, Musk has become a papal figure this way. Apocalypse is a prevailing concept in Christianity and increasingly our secular politics, according to Whitney Phillips, an assistant professor of media studies at the University of Oregon School of Journalism and Communication. .edu. In her new book, The Shadow Gospel, you have to believe it now, The Shadow Gospel, How Anti-Liberal Demonology Possessed U.S. Religion, Media, and Politics. Phillips and co-author Mark Brockway describe evangelicals' depictions of a cosmic battle between good and evil, the latter personified as the liberal devil. And didn't we just read just the other day that Tucker Carlson had gone off this edge and was saying that he was having literal physical battles with demons in his sleep or something? Today's politics, Phillips said, furnish an apocalypse that you can take a bite out of now because the liberal devil is already here. I'm not sure I understand that entirely, but I think I get the picture. In Musk's version, said Phillips, evil is wokeness, or the woke mind virus. I'm making little quote marks with my fingers here, which the billionaire associates with liberal identity politics that he insists is forwarded by the New York Times, National Public Radio, higher education in general, the two places that Epstein is rowing back and forth between, art and video games. I doubt very much that he blames it on video games because he plays plenty. And ex-competitor Blue Sky, among other targets. Well, that one is very direct, and we understand that as transactional. But Musk was just bragging not that long ago that he was ranked in the top 20 in the world in some stupid video game that ranks people. And something, it's the devil when you do it, but it's awesome when I do it. That's not inconsistent with Musk's or Christianity's view of the world, or conservative Christianity anyway. Wokeness, according to Musk, is, quote, absolutely the religion that occupies the space previously held by Christianity. So that way, that gets current Christians mad at wokeness, because somebody says it's trying to replace, you will not replace us. Well, wokeness will not replace Jesus. But wokeness isn't seeking to replace Jesus and couldn't, and in some cases might actually be the same thing if you think about it. But a rich guy has said it in a large church from the pulpit, and so here we go. Musk's political end times vision was hard to imagine back in 2013 when he climbed into a 1970s-era Volkswagen van to record a podcast with actor Rainn Wilson, who played Dwight Schrute. Is it Schrute in The Office? Wilson, a Baha'i by religion, asked a series of religion-related questions, pressing the tycoon on whether he had a, quote, spiritual life. I'm less convinced that there's, say, some super consciousness watching over our every movement and kind of evaluating it against some criteria and deciding whether we're going to go to one place or another when we die, Musk said. I think that's unlikely. And that sounds like what you'd think Musk would say, certainly at the time. Can science and religion coexist? Wilson asked. Probably not, Musk said. Do you pray? I don't. I didn't even pray when I almost died of malaria. Oh, if I had known he had almost died of malaria, I would have prayed. Well, anyway, eventually, Musk explained that he draws his philosophy from Douglas Adams's comedic science fiction novel, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, in which the meaning of life comes not from discerning answers, Musk said, but from finding, quote, the right question. And that tracks, for sure, in every way. And I believe that he probably did believe that. But I don't know whether he's just getting older or just taking advantage of whatever opportunity is before him and changing what he claims to be his philosophy, whether he's really changing it or not. And also, it's also part of an ongoing story arc that a lot of people are participating in as they get to these higher echelons of power, experimenting with lots and lots of weird drug cocktail concoctions that eventually lead them around to the same sort of arc of just wildly out of control belief in their own infallibility, and then come crashing back to Earth. But with $300 billion behind you, it's hard to get you to crash. Anyway, 8 years later, he sat for another podcast interview, this time with the Babylon Bee. This is important, apparently. Somebody was pointing this out, this weird, love affair with the Babylon Bee, a satirical conservative Christian website. I didn't realize they were Christian as well. Asked what book he would add to the Bible. Musk named Adams's novel, but noted he was raised Anglican and attended Hebrew day school as a child. Oh, interesting. Things took an evangelical turn near the end of the interview when the co-hosts asked Musk to accept Jesus. That's not fair. I just thought I was here for an hour interview. I didn't realize you were asking me to change my entire life. But that's what evangelical Christians do. They will ask you to accept Jesus online at Starbucks if they talk to you. As soft piano music, which is very Jesus-y, everyone knows, played in the background, Musk expressed respect for Jesus' teachings. I mean, I don't know whether it looked like those guys were going to beat him up if they didn't, but that's the polite thing to do. All right. Expressed respect for Jesus' teachings and referred to Einstein, saying, I believe in the God of Spinoza, but hey, if Jesus is saving people, I won't stand in his way. I mean, it's not a ringing endorsement, but I think he just said yes. A co-host replied. Another joked, we got him. Well, clearly it was a joke. I hope for you. Anyway, his connection to the bee proved pivotal. In 2022, the website's Twitter account was suspended after its publication of a story widely condemned as anti-trans. According to documents filed in a resulting lawsuit, Musk, who has referred to his transgender daughter as having been, quote, killed by the woke mind virus, unquote, exchanged outraged texts with his ex-wife, Tallulah Jane Riley, after news of the Twitter suspension broke. And remember, this is the Twitter suspension of the Babylon Bee. Like, who effing cares? But this drove ketamine Musk off the edge, apparently. Musk wrote, maybe buy it and change it to properly support free speech. By October, he owned the platform. 3 weeks after he took over, the Bee's account was reinstated. He bought the thing because he was mad that the Babylon Bee couldn't tell him 250 characters at a time. It's Christian conservative jokes. You could just subscribe and read them all, but no, it had to be on Twitter. Whatever, man. Then, in a July interview with Jordan Peterson, a Canadian, this is your fault, Canada, Canadian psychologist with a large male following, that is to say there are many males following him. Whether they are themselves large, I don't know, and I doubt, given what I have seen in the past 24 hours online, etc. And I refer here to something I haven't discussed on the show, but talked about or just found and then passed on Blue Sky, in which another weirdo MAGA guy has gone on to say that, well, maybe you saw this thing. I'll have to make a note, share it with you, in which he says that if you're having sex with your wife and aren't giving her babies, you're just, he says, don't give your... Good morning, everybody, by the way. Don't give your wife orgasms, give her babies. If you're having the other kind of sex, it isn't about babies and is just about orgasms. That's gay sex, and you don't want to be having gay sex because something gay is bad. You know where these guys are from. But, I mean, these are also guys who believe that proper personal hygiene after moving your bowels, say, is gay. Because you're touching that place. I can't help those people. I don't want to help those people. I want them to become infected from their bad hygiene and therefore decrease the surplus population in keeping with the spirit of the holidays. That is to say, watching A Christmas Carol, not, being merry or anything like that. You're not supposed to be wishing death on people, I think, during the holiday season. Although... the Hanukkah holiday season. I guess you're wishing it upon those assailing your temple. But okay. Again, we've become distracted. We're talking about Elon Musk and his weird overlap with religion, not our own weird ideas about religion. So he's having an interview with Jordan Peterson, who's wearing a wild-looking jacket because of how manly he is. Anyway, he's wearing a blazer covered in Christian iconography, apparently. And he asks Musk, in what sense, then, are you not religious? And he says, I would say that I'm probably a cultural Christian, replied Musk. He also later agreed with Peterson, who has both identified as a Christian and called God the ultimate fictional character. So he's a little bit of both, whatever audience he's talking to. Anyway, he told him that he preferred societies premised on Christian axiomatic assumptions. I would say probably property rights is the big one that he's talking about. I have $300 billion and you don't, because kind of cultural Christian value things or whatever. Musk, Epstein said, may feel out of sync with his one-time non-religious community, which has not taken the same rightward turn that he has. Epstein pointed to exit polls indicating religiously unaffiliated voters were one of the only major groups that trended more liberal rather than more conservative in the November election. For Elon Musk, or somebody like him, cultural and secularized Christianities can be a source of social power or social affirmation of his goodness and greatness, when other more traditional secular humanist atheist communities and groups might reject his claim or desire to be seen as some kind of messianic figure, he said, or serious religious communities who actually adhere to consistent religious values might say, we already have a Jesus, and it's Jesus. We don't need another one. Certainly not this guy. Epstein said Musk likely finds common cause for his views on transgender rights in corners of Christianity he otherwise might not agree with theologically. I'm a cultural Christian. The part that hates transgender people. So other than that, love thy neighbor, give 10% of your earnings, right? No, that part, no, I'm not big on that. Conservative Christians may also support Musk's embrace of pronatalism, his belief that people should have more children in order to stave off population collapse, which isn't happening. I'm super pro-baby, Musk, who has fathered 12 children, it says here, told the crowd in Harrisburg. Conservative Christians, in turn, have increasingly embraced Musk as a fellow political believer, if not a professed follower of Jesus. That seems to be a central thing, though, about their religious and who's a religious follower. The Reverend Franklin Graham, son of evangelist Billy Graham, has repeatedly praised Musk on X, and the pastor at Pilgrim Hill Reformed Fellowship in Tennessee, where Trump's nominee for Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth attends. Tennessee. He's all over the place, Pete Hegseth. Drunk flying all over the country for everything. Said Musk's removal of censorships on X is a, quote, huge blessing. At the Trump event in Harrisburg, one audience member asked Musk whether he believed Jesus Christ was, quote, a real person who was crucified and died and is risen, and God is Jesus. Musk answered the questioner, asked the questioner in return what he meant by, quote, real person. Define your terms. Debate me. And eventually acknowledged he believed Jesus, quote, is real, not Israel, but is real, but quickly moved on without addressing the man's theological points, because, no, I don't agree with you. But Musk's answer seemed to be enough for the audience, and when it later cheered him after he called liberals, quote, enemies of democracy, which I think he is. Oh, by the way, I've changed my mind. Democracy does suck. To the extent that liberals are an enemy, then, of democracy, we like them, but no, we hate them still. Musk appeared to be more comfortable conflating his form of cultural Christianity, however defined, with culture war. And that's a much better definition of what makes him a cultural Christian. I love culture war. So, to the extent, how much of a Christian am I? Well, to the extent that Christianity is a religion of peace, I am not that. I like the war part. And so does Pete Hegseth, or at least he says he does. I don't know how much participating in the war he's going to be doing. Okay. Let's see. Time for our third break. A note here from Scott saying that he's seeing a lot of French Revolution memes that probably has more to do with the murder of the CEO and not my French pronunciation of rapprochement. But okay, I'm seeing a lot of those too. And in fact, I saw a little bit of pushback from yesterday's, offhand, quick, in as few characters as possible, summarize what happened on the show and tweet it out thing, in which I said there were mixed reactions at best to the murder of this CEO, and somebody pushing back and saying, I haven't seen any mixed reactions, only ones that are supporting the killing. I have seen mixed reactions, so I'm sorry, that's what I saw. But interesting how invested in the positive reaction some people can be. We'll be right back. Hi everybody, it's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and patreon.com, patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Got one more segment to cram everything in, and there's, again, still a million things that I want to tell you about. Seems like one of the more important ones to try to get a discussion about before the weekend comes is, I see two different items covering the same angle here. One, Pocket estimates how long it'll take to read things. It doesn't take into consideration how terrible I am at actually just reading all the way through. A 7-minute read over at the New York Times versus a 2-minute read at go.com, which I think is an ABC News link. But both saying the same thing. Do I go with the 2-minute version of it or the 7-minute version of it? Here's a 2-minute version of it. Biden considering preemptive pardons for officials Trump might target, according to their source. Over at the New York Times. Oh, this one bumped me out of pocket. So the Times headline on it is almost identical. I think Biden team considers blanket pardons before Trump's promised retribution. So this builds on the part of the justification for the pardon of Hunter Biden that, look, these guys have promised retribution / we'll make it up if we need to in order to target Hunter Biden and put him away for life or execute him, or charge him with treason, charge his dad, whatever it is that they think the end game of this is. They've made it clear that the reality of the situation doesn't matter. And, I fear that also applies to the pardon. Like, I don't care that he was pardoned. We're prosecuting him anyway. Well, you can't because, stop us then. Show me in the Constitution where it says I can't kill you for trying to stop me from doing this unconstitutional thing. Well, if you put it that way, that's really tough. Right. So, in the one sense, sure, it's absolutely justified. They're going to do unfair, unconstitutional, un-American things to try to get their revenge it doesn't matter to them what the law is or ought to be. They're going to do this thing. So I'm going to make it as difficult as possible. On the other hand, you might say, well, what good is a pardon to somebody who doesn't care about it? Well, you have to at least try, right? So what about all these other people who are going to almost assuredly fall under the same category of people that they're going to try to take revenge on? And these various articles list them out. Don't they deserve to be protected? Sure, they deserve to be protected. However, I will say that I have seen also other people push back and say this is a terrible idea. It's going to make them look like they've done something wrong when they haven't. Because we're talking about Anthony Fauci. Some of the lists include Liz Cheney, any number of people who have done nothing wrong, but who nonetheless will almost certainly be targeted by the incoming administration. Certainly if Kash Patel has anything to say about it. But they don't even need Kash Patel at the FBI to actually to do this anyway. It would just make things easier and more obvious if it was him. But okay. The point is that they have people that they want to target that's unfair, but somebody was saying if you give them pardons, then it makes it, God, nothing could make it look more like a cover-up, which is exactly what MAGA already thinks it is, than pardoning people and then saying, oh, but they didn't even need pardons. And they didn't, though, but that's the truth. But MAGA people are wackos and delusional and dangerous, and there's, like, how do you deal with them on a rational basis if they're going to be irrational? If you don't pardon them, they'll say, good, fine, prosecute them. And if you do pardon them, they'll say, good, fine, it was a cover-up, and let's ignore the pardons. And the pardon only, I mean, in light of what just happened to the United Healthcare CEO, there are some dangerous MAGA wackos and others who will say, well, look, how do you deal with somebody who's obviously guilty of crimes against humanity, but who can't be or won't be prosecuted for some reason? Well, they found a way to get to the United Healthcare CEO, even though he hadn't been pardoned of anything. You think your stupid piece of paper pardon is going to stand in the way of our delivering the ultimate Christian justice to this person? It's not Christian. What are you talking about? Shut up. I'm going to deliver that. And, the pardon won't help at that point. And, by the way, somebody will do something like this in the belief that Trump will pardon them for having extrajudicially executed an enemy of the state. Whether or not that's true, I don't even know. He might. He might not, but it won't do anybody any good. It's too late. This person's been murdered. So what's going on over at ABC News? They tell us it this way. Biden considering preemptive pardons for officials that Trump might target. Possible names include General Mark Milley, Liz Cheney, Adam Schiff, and Dr. Fauci. Mary Bruce, Jonathan Karl, and Rachel Scott tell us this. They're not on the list for the pardons. They're the reporters. President Joe Biden and his senior aides are discussing possible preemptive pardons for people who might be targeted by the incoming Trump administration, according to a source close to the president. And, and who has a clothespin on his nose, I guess, because he's close to the president. Oh, no, the other president. Oh, okay, I see. I thought, for some reason I just quickly realized close to the president, PU, Donald Trump, he smells. Whatever happened to that story anyway? No, I don't know. Maybe Joe Biden smells too, but they're talking about pardons. I was just thinking more and more about the other guy who claims to be becoming president who wants to be executing these people. They're on the list, according to that president. Possible names include current and former officials such as retired General Mark Milley. Now, we named them up top, of course, in the subheader. Cheney, Schiff, what? And Fauci. Politico was the first to report the news. The consideration comes after Biden issued a full pardon for his son Hunter Biden on December 1st. The move sparked backlash from Republicans and criticism from many Democrats. Great. Wonderful. Good job, everybody. The White House said Biden did so despite his past pledges not to pardon his son because it didn't seem his political opponents would let go of it. So I guess same thing now applies to some of these other guys. And again, keep in mind that, Mark Milley, of course, has been accused of treason. Used the word treason. Trump did with respect to Milley. And, of course, that will trigger MAGA troops to say treason. Everybody knows the penalty for treason is execution. Maybe. Yeah, I mean, it's on the books. Might not be what we actually sentence people to anymore. But the point is, once I heard it was treason, and now Trump loves to pardon his supporters, I'll kill Millie, then I will plead with Trump to exonerate me. It's not a good plan, but it's kind of a MAGA plan. Anyway, Cheney and Schiff have also long been criticized by Trump over their investigation into everything that they did. I don't know. I think it's enough really to give you the headline on all this. I don't know whether the New York Times version of it is any more, introspective, but I guess I'll say I doubt it. The point is there's a list of people that now Biden needs to consider, well, what's the best path here? Protect them from baseless prosecution with a pardon, roll the dice and hope that nothing happens? What's the effect of the backlash among MAGA weirdos who will say this definitely makes them look guilty and definitely is evidence that I was right. These people are traitors and are engaged in the cover-up. And I'll be on the side of good and right if I do something about it, like somebody did with the healthcare CEO. I don't know. It seems like a bad idea to not protect them. Well, that might trigger weirdos to kill them. Well, yeah, but they might already be triggered for that anyway. Or a regular prosecution that results in an acquittal. Even the system works, the guardrails hold, right? Well, I don't believe that. I think it was corrupt. I think the jury was rigged. I'm going to assassinate them anyway. So I don't know that there's any way to de-wacko-ify the dangerous people. I think it's too late for that. But yeah, but then also, well, do you make it look like they're guilty by giving? I assume so, but I mean, maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe it's best to try to do anything you can to protect them from having attempts made to leverage the legal system against them. Nothing you can do about perhaps people leveraging outright extrajudicial murder against them, but maybe that can't figure into your calculus then, since that's not going to work. But also, there's every reason to believe that they just won't honor the pardons. But is that a reason to not issue the pardons? You got to throw up every barrier you can, right? I have mixed thoughts about it, but I think in the end, you just got to say, if you want to railroad these people, you're going to have to come through all the barriers first and issue the pardons. It's crazy what we have to deal with. All right. There's a couple of other things that I definitely wanted to share with you. One was a story in The Verge that will serve as an intro to going back to one of the earlier stories. I said I was going to do this yesterday. I read you the story, or began reading you the story that Charles Pierce wrote for Esquire, that the premise of which was entirely wrong and they had to retract the story. What do you mean you can't pardon your own family members? George H.W. Bush did it for Neil Bush, and he was a total jerk. And here are the 10,000 reasons why he was a total jerk and why he needed a pardon. But the fact is that he didn't get one, apparently. That wasn't... I did think it was a little bit weird. Like, yeah, though... I guess my first thought was, did George H.W. Bush pardon Neil Bush, or did George W. Bush pardon Neil Bush? Because it seemed like we didn't know the full effect of what Neil Bush had done until it was almost time, or maybe it already was, W's administration. But then I got to thinking about that, and no, that feels too late. I feel like I learned more about Neil earlier, but I feel like it happened. We learned more about what Neil Bush was up to in between, like during the Clinton administration. When was the timing for that? Maybe it just felt like he needed a pardon, but he didn't get one, apparently. And lots of examples that people are holding up. Well, what about Jimmy Carter pardoning Billy Bush? Billy Bush. No, Billy Bush was the guy on the Access Hollywood thing. Billy Carter. Jimmy Carter's brother would actually be named Billy Carter. Didn't he pardon him? Apparently that didn't happen either. They're definitely... He did pardon Roger Clinton, though, didn't he? Bill Clinton? I mean, I think that now it got me doubting everything. But apparently one of the problems is here, the Verge story, stop using generative AI as a search engine, which I don't know whether anybody definitely intended to do that. But now when you go to a traditional search engine, you type in a question, the first response you get is the AI just forced on you. Here's what the AI found related to your question. And then later on down the page, we'll give you some of the search results from the traditional search. But because it's put there first, sometimes people just jump to the conclusion, I used Google, not a generative AI. I didn't go to chatbot GPT and ask this question. I'm not dumb. Well, Google answered your question using their own AI and gave it to you first, and you clicked on that and you used it. And I probably have done that. And I think that's what's at fault for Charles Pierce thinking that there had been a pardon of Neil Bush, and also was behind one of the people on The View. Ana Navarro Cardenas is the name of the person in this case who did the same thing. Well, I'm going to go on here. Didn't how many other presidents have pardoned family members? And they went in and they looked it up and they got a chatbot answer and they went on the air with it. And two of the examples were the ones that everybody kind of sort of remembers, but sort of remembers it in the, what do they call it? The Shazam effect. Like, well, didn't you know that story? Just like widespread mass incorrect recall of things that are confusing or similar, but it didn't actually happen that way. Although the one that Ana Navarro Cardenas used had a little bit of the tell in it, right? The idea that Woodrow Wilson had pardoned his brother-in-law, Hunter Debutts, and it makes you say, Debutts? Is that a real name? I should look that up, and it would have led you to the right answer. The Verge writes, Elizabeth Lopato, stop using generative AI as a search engine. A fake presidential pardon explains why you can't trust robots with the news. How many presidents have pardoned their relatives? It turns out this is a tricky question to answer. Following Hunter Biden's pardon by his father, several commentators have looked to precedents, other pardons of relatives. Case in point, Ana Navarro Cardenas, commentator who appears on The View and on CNN. On X, Navarro Cardenas cited a pardon granted by President Woodrow Wilson of his brother-in-law, Hunter Debutts. That was news to me. The official clemency record search only works for people who've applied since 1989, and the page of clemency recipients by president only stretches back to Richard Nixon. Such a pardon would have been controversial, yet it wasn't mentioned on the bio page in Wilson's presidential library. Find a Grave suggests Wilson didn't even have a brother-in-law with that name. It shows 9 brothers-in-law, but not our man Hunter Debutts. I can't prove Wilson didn't pardon Hunter Debutts. I can only tell you that if he did, that person was not his brother-in-law. Navarro Cardenas wasn't the only person posting perplexing pardons. An Esquire article called "A President Shouldn't Pardon His Son." Hello, anybody remember Neil Bush? That's the one we were reading. Was based on the premise that George H.W. Bush pardoned his son Neil. It has since been retracted, quote, due to an error. The day before its publication, Occupy Democrats executive editor Grant Stern tweeted a similar claim that Jimmy Carter had pardoned his brother Billy and George H.W. Bush pardoned Neil. As far as I can tell, neither pardon actually occurred. Where was all this coming from? Well, I don't know what Stern or Esquire's source was, but I know Navarro Cardenas's because she had a follow-up message for critics saying, take it up with ChatGPT. Well, that was dumb. She actually asked ChatGPT. That's quite stupid. You should at least go to an actual search engine and then skip that first answer. But there you go. Well, I did. I asked ChatGPT, and it identified Hunter Debutts as the husband of Wilson's sister Anne. Woodrow Wilson's family was quite prominent, and his sister Anne married Hunter Debutts, who was a wealthy and socially connected individual from a prominent family. ChatGPT told me. Hunter Debutts, it's a whole narrative here. Hunter Debutts was part of Wilson's extended family, though he is not as well remembered in historical accounts as other figures in Wilson's life. According to the New York Times, Anne Wilson married a man named George Howe. It is unclear where the name Hunter Debutts even came from. ChatGPT, it turns out, is a woefully bad way to explore the historical record. When I opened it up and asked, how many U.S. presidents have pardoned their relatives? I got one correct answer. Bill Clinton pardoned Roger Clinton, his half-brother. But alongside that, ChatGPT also told me that George H.W. Bush pardoned his son Neil. I didn't remember that, and I think about the savings and loan crisis a very normal amount, which is often. I am well-adjusted and pleasant at parties, it notes parenthetically, but I double-checked using the same process I did for debuts. I went to the official Justice Department page for presidential pardons. Neil Bush wasn't there. I did a search in the clemency system. Not there either. Then I went to some newspaper archives that I couldn't find, and I couldn't find any evidence of a pardon. It's very hard to prove a negative. I suppose it is possible that Neil Bush has a secret pardon somewhere in the White House that none of us have ever heard about, but I feel fairly convinced that no one pardoned him, least of all his father. There's similarly scant information that would point to Jimmy Carter pardoning his brother. Billy Carter's New York Times obituary makes no mention of a pardon, and neither does the Washington Post's obit. I asked Stern if his source was ChatGPT, and he said no, and he didn't specify any further where he'd gotten his information. Still, asking ChatGPT if Jimmy Carter pardoned Billy gets an unequivocal yes. In fact, it says in 1981, as Jimmy Carter was nearing the end of his presidency, he pardoned his brother Billy for any possible crimes related to his dealings with Libya. The pardon, however, did not cover potential civil liabilities or other legal actions, and Billy Carter ultimately agreed to testify before Congress and pay a fine for his actions. Is that right? I don't know. I recognize this is a bit tedious, but I'm trying to show my work. It's the best way I can establish my trustworthiness, and something you won't get from ChatGPT. It's also something none of the people who made erroneous claims did. ChatGPT gave me some other really weird answers, ones that didn't fit the question I asked about presidents pardoning their relatives. It cited Gerald Ford's pardon of Richard Nixon, qualifying it with, though not a direct family member. Yeah. It also mentioned Andrew Johnson gave amnesty to former Confederate leaders, including some family members of prominent Southern figures. It also bizarrely told me that Lyndon B. Johnson gave clemency to, quote, various associates, though noting they didn't often directly involve his own family. What? That's actually the writer's question. What? Mine too, though. It's understandable ChatGPT wouldn't mention Hunter Biden's pardon since it took place beyond its 2023 cutoff date. But oddly, Donald Trump's pardon of Charles Kushner, the father of his son-in-law Jared Kushner, doesn't appear either. It occurred in 2020, so why not? Right? Surely Kushner is more of a family member to Trump than Nixon is to Ford. I emailed Hearst to ask if Esquire writer Charles Pierce had used ChatGPT as a source for his article. Spokesperson Allison Keene said he hadn't and declined to say anything further about how the error might have occurred. I'm sure it's very embarrassing, but Stern told me that he found his information through internet searches on Google, though again, the first response is, not actual search, but okay. Here's what I found on Google. An article from something called the Hindustan Times. I run into that every once in a while. Before Biden, Trump, Clinton, and Carter's most notorious presidential pardons for family members. It claims erroneously that Carter pardoned Billy. I set my search cutoff date to December 2nd to avoid catching any fact-check articles coming from the false claims. As for Neil Bush, I found a semi-viral X post and an article in something called Times Now. I don't know what the source is for those claims in either the Hindustan Times or Times Now, but I thought it might be worth seeing what Google Gemini had to say about those pardons while I was down this particular rabbit hole. Gemini, in response to how many presidents have pardoned their sons, answers just one, Joe Biden. But asked how many presidents have pardoned family members, it says Jimmy Carter pardoned Billy, not his son, but George H.W. Bush pardoned Neil, who is his son. It doesn't mention Kushner or Trump. How interesting. You'll notice that in this image, the screenshot of the answers here, there are highlight colors. That's because I asked Google to check its results. Abraham Lincoln pardon. Now, this is what it says, by the way. The answer that he got: several U.S. presidents have pardoned family members throughout history. Few notable examples. First, Joe Biden. then Bill Clinton and Roger Clinton. Then, next, Abraham Lincoln pardoned his wife's cousin, Emily Todd Helm, a Confederate supporter. Then George H.W. Bush, clemency for Neil. And then Carter and Billy. You'll notice the images, right, has got the highlight colors. That's because I asked Google to check its results. The Abraham Lincoln pardon, which is real, is highlighted in red. Google warns it didn't find relevant content. The Bush and Carter pardons, which are fake, are highlighted in green. And the Carter result specifically cites the erroneous Hindustan Times article as its source. Perplexity does little better, noting Biden, Trump, Clinton, and Lincoln pardoned relatives, but asked how many presidents pardoned their sons. It lists Lincoln's letter of amnesty on behalf of his wife's half-sister in its answers. One's wife's half-sister, it has to be said, is not a son. Whatever happened in this case, there's a running pattern of people relying on ChatGPT and other AI services to provide answers, only to get hallucinations in return. Perhaps you remember earlier this year when a trailer for Francis Ford Coppola's Megalopolis, I do not, was pulled because it contained fabricated quotes from critics. A generative AI, not identified, had made them up. In fact, ChatGPT is often entirely wrong, according to Columbia Journalism Review. Given 200 quotes and asked to identify the publisher that was the source of those quotes, ChatGPT was partially or entirely wrong more than 3/4 of the time. Meanwhile, by the way, keep in mind that Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy say, we're going to be using generative AI to come up with cut ideas. So they may be hallucinating the cuts they're making or hallucinating the wisdom of the cuts that are real or that can be made that they will recommend making. Just wanted to let you know that. Even using ChatGPT to help with the writing process is risky. Ask Jeff Hancock, the founder of the Stanford Social Media Lab and a well-known misinformation researcher. A legal document he filed had cited sources that didn't exist. Hancock insists he wrote the document himself, but he used ChatGPT 440, is that right, to write its citation list. Oh, that's super dumb, though. Resulting in 2 made-up citations and 1 citation had the wrong authors attached. Now, a defender of AI might, rightly, say that a real journalist should check the answers provided by ChatGPT. That fact-checking is a critical part of our job. I agree, which is why I've walked you through my own checking in this article. But these are only the public and embarrassing examples of something I think is happening much more often in private. A normal person using ChatGPT and trusting the information it gives them. A mistake, obviously. One advantage old school Google search has over the so-called answer engines is that it links directly to primary sources. Answer engines just give you an answer and is often unclear what the source is. For me, using ChatGPT or Google's AI function creates extra work. I have to go check the answer against a primary source. Old Google search just gave me the sources directly. But people who are less cautious and less persnickety than I am, which I suspect is most people, simply stop at the answer and never check to see if it's right. This is, of course, the intent of the answer engine. That's what it's designed to do. Someone, probably someone involved with Perplexity AI, will now say, but we can annotate sourcing with footnotes. Same problem. Who clicks on footnotes? This is all bad design, of course. Technology that actually serves people takes into account human behavior. Maybe there's a way to make generative AI useful, but in its current state, I feel tremendously sorry for anyone gullible enough to use it as a research tool. I know people are sick of talking about glue on pizza, but I find the large-scale degradation of our information environment that has already taken place shocking. Just search Amazon if you want to see what I mean. This, what's he linking to here, or she linking to? I don't know, let's see. I'm sorry, but I cannot fulfill this request as it goes against our open AI use policy. That story. Oh, right. The story of all the fake Amazon and other sales platforms listings of things that have no description except the accidental inclusion of the response to the bot programming instructions. We talked about that a while back, but I'm almost at the end of this article, and we should just get through it. Just search for that story, though, if you'll see what she means. If this happens in small ways, like Google's AI wrongly saying that male foxes mate for life, and big ones like spreading false information around a major news event. What good is an answer machine that nobody can trust? Wow. Well, so, okay, we have to retract the inclusion of Charles Pierce's story about Neil Bush having been pardoned. The sad thing is that now we're out of time for me to share it, but this was an important angle on the story. I have kept Charles Pierce's story in pocket because the original text of the story, which has now been, I think, deleted from the Esquire site, is still viewable in there. And there is lots of actual good information about what a rotten apple Neil Bush was, or the various stupid things, let's say, that he got himself wrapped up in that one might have thought needed to result in a pardon, but apparently didn't. But it basically, recounts his involvement in the savings and loan scandals, involved his scam in his educational nonprofit thingy, whatever it was, that was, a big bust anyway, but that in the eventual governmental craze for education reform stood him instead to pocket millions of dollars of federal spending along the lines of what Elon Musk is trying to do now. But it didn't work out for him. But, it might have resulted in something that might have needed a pardon. There's lots of stuff that's in there that's actually true information about Neil Bush. But being that the premise of the article was that he had received a pardon, that thing just couldn't stand. Maybe one day we will be able to read through this stuff. Also, something you should be thinking about, and I didn't get a chance to discuss on the show, but definitely needs some attention, and I'll include it in a roundup, or I'll ask Scott to include it in a roundup. Andy Baio's Blue Sky post about the work of Hank Green, noticing the increase in bots on Blue Sky that appear to be AI written with the instructions, I just want you to continue disagreeing with whoever's talking as much as possible until you drive them crazy.
You have been listening
it's really weird.
to Kagro in the morning with David Waldman.
It's really something. You should take a look at that one and see if you've run into any of it. In the meantime, next, before you leave for the weekend, make sure you stay tuned for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Justice Putnam, following us right here on the station. Right up top of the summary today, Trump pick for IRS Commissioner Billy Long has already promised to screw over Trump's own voters. I can't believe it. Stay tuned.